Okay, we are live, but you all know the drill. We got to let the stream breathe just for a couple of seconds. Make sure we're getting green check marks across the board, and it looks like we're good. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime, who you know and love. He is my fellow football priest. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, props for holding down the halftime stream while I was in a car traveling back from a impromptu doctor's appointment for my wife. Don't worry, everything's fine. Everything's good. But Zack, that was a job well done, my friend. And here we are now, 2 quarters later. The Broncos, I'll tell you my first reaction off the cuff. All right, here's my gut reaction. I'm stunned the Broncos were able to have a chance under 3 minutes to win this game. What I'm not, without Drew Lock, what I'm not surprised is that they came up a day late and a dollar short. 4th and 2, they needed 2 yards, Zack, on 2 downs, couldn't get it.
You throw it twice there, Chad. 2 shotgun passes, empty sets against a blitzing Pittsburgh defense. Again, guys, anyone who was on with me at halftime, again, the Broncos lost because of coaching. Coaching lost this ball game for the Broncos. They lost it on Monday night against the Titans. They should have been 2-0, you can argue, Denver. They have the talent. That's what they have proven by now. They have the talent to win. Even without Drew Lock, your quarterback, even without Phillip Lindsay, even without Cortland Sutton, even without Von Miller, you took Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh down to the wire on the brink. They should have won this game, Chad. The play calling in that situation was atrocious. And Pat Shurmur, the entire game, for the most part, was atrocious. Again, coaching. It's going to be the detriment to this season, Chad. It's going to be the mantra that we look back on 2020 and say it wasn't the personnel, it wasn't the on-field product, it was the guys on the sidelines with the headsets and the guys up top making the calls.
Here's what I'll say. Fangio's defense, they did their job. This time, they did their job. I mean, that last run by James Conner, the game was already salted away. It was over. The offense blew their chance. The defense kept this a game. They did their job. I'm with you. I got to question those last 2 plays offensively that the Broncos had. But Vic Fangio, day late, a dollar short. And Zack, every time we talked about Jeff Driskel in the offseason, and this kind of intensified when he had a not-so-good training camp, we would touch wood. Every time we'd mention the prospect of if the Broncos have to turn to Jeff Driskel, so far he's not looking very much like a fail-safe. He's looking like But in this case, you know what? There were some obvious rusty moments for him. That final possession in particular, that some of the throws on that play, on that drive. But I'll be honest with you, dude. I am more impressed with what I saw from Driskel than I expected to be. And that's a credit to him. I think that's a credit to Mike Shula. That's a credit to Pat Shurmur in a sense as well. And look, this is, again, man, the Broncos, against all odds, losing their burgeoning franchise quarterback who was not playing well before he went down, for what it's worth, losing him so early, they still had a chance. You brought something up, Zack, before we went live. The Steelers kind of played down to the Broncos in the second half. I think there is some truth to that, but I also think the Broncos were able to make the most of every opportunity they had in the second half up until that 3rd and 4th down at the end.
The Broncos had no business hanging around this second half. You thought going after, into the second half from the first half, it was shaping up to be a bloodbath, a blowout. Credit to the Broncos. They always fight hard. They play hard for Vic Fangio. They never really get blown out. They're always into the thick of the end of the game. The Steelers did, though. They kind of punched down in the second half. And that happens. You take your foot off the pedal. You saw it last year when the Broncos got up big on Minnesota. We all know the final result there. In terms of Driskel, I'm right there with you. I was actually impressed. That corner route to Fan in the end zone, that was beautiful. That wheel route to Melvin Gordon, that was a Driskel dime. Hashtag Driskel dime. Very impressed. And also that pass to Fan that he made that bobbling catch on. Good accuracy, good poise in the pocket. Any other quarterback, Chad, coming in cold, getting hit or pressured on literally every single drop back, he hung in there to the end and he marched the Broncos down the field. It wasn't his fault. It was the play calling. He could have had the Broncos in position to win the game if only Pat Shurmur was better on those 2 final downs.
Maybe. I think Driskel, as much as I want to compliment him again, I did compliment him. I was more impressed with him. I thought it was going to be a big time blowout. When Locke went down and was ruled out for the game, I was like, here we go, blowout. But he surprised me. He really did. And that's a credit to Jeff Driskel. And, it's a silver lining that we can maybe hold on to a little bit. Fans can, heading into week 3 with Tom Brady heading to Mile High. But Zach, he's got to get rid of that ball on 4th down. Maybe it wasn't a great call. Maybe the protection was off. Maybe a running back blew what should have been, oh, look, it's a blitzer. Instead of running my route, I'm going to hang in and pick up this guy. We don't know exactly schematically or assignment-wise what went wrong there. But at the same time, that was one of the examples of Jeff Driscoll's rust showing in spades. That, and also on the goal line, I think it was 3rd quarter, taking that sack from TJ Watt in the red zone. A few moments like that, and you're like, look, Jeff Driskel, once he shakes off the rust, I mean, look, this dude, Zach, we're going to grab those super chats. We'll grab Mr. Castillo here in just 1 second. He finished, Zach. This is Jeff Driscoll's stat line. It's not stunning, but he went 18 for 34, ended up throwing for 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, which should not have been. That was on Cortland Sutton,
right?
84.9 rating.
I'll take it.
If you're the Denver Broncos, so far so good on that $2.5 million investment this year.
I'd rather pay him the money than Nick Van Ette, Chad. So, yeah, he was a pretty good pickup, and he's exactly what we thought he would be. A guy who's not going to blow you away, but good enough to hold the fort and win you some ball games. Pretty much a souped-up version of Brandon Allen from last year. And I'll take that behind Drew Lock. And I'm actually really impressed with how Driskel played. He hung in there, showed good poise, accuracy. You can do a lot worse for having a backup than having Jeff Driskel.
Kenneth Booker, we missed your super chat because things were hot and heavy during halftime. This is us going back and grabbing it. We do not miss super chats. So Kenneth jumped in, and this was during halftime, but he's saying if we get the first pick, trade it for a king's ransom. Yeah, I don't think I get what you're saying. It's just a little too early in the game. Like this, the worst thing happened, right? The Broncos have now lost their 2 best players in a matter of 2 weeks, Von Miller and Drew Lock. All right, and when I say best, people can pick nits and say how. Drew Lock hasn't proven to be, let's just say at worst then, 2 of their I would say their 2 most important players have already gone down. Then Cortland Sutton, credit to him. He suits up, he plays. But like we talked about last week, when you're trying to decide as a coaching staff, do I trust him? Can he go? Is he good? You want him to play. And he made some big plays today. He had the couple of 20-yard plus receptions. But you have to wonder when that ball went through his hands, it ended up in a pick. Was he like, ow? And was it the pain that affected that? Effectiveness is an aspect of any player that is playing hurt. And John, real quick, grab that super chat that I don't know if you've already passed it from Mr. Castillo real quick. Let's get to the super chats hot and heavy here. Jumping in. Appreciate you, Mr. Castillo. He says, coaching staff loses the game again. How do they not run it on 3rd and 2? Zach, you said it.
It's coaching. It's just play calling. It's having situational coaching. It's the same thing as Fangio's timeouts for Monday night against the Titans. It's situational coaching. And you would expect Pat Shurmur, being a noted offensive coordinator and a former head coach, he would know in that situation against a very active, blitz-happy defense not to go empty set shotgun passes when you need 2 yards on 2 downs. And Melvin Gordon, for his credit, is running very hard. Why? We don't know what he was thinking, Chad, but it comes down to coaching in the end. It's always the bottom line.
I've been waiting. It only took 2 games, but I was waiting to see when Melvin Gordon's, not supposed, but his purported receiving acumen was going to come out in the wash for the Broncos, because that was a big reason that the proponents of the Melvin Gordon deal justified it was, well, he can, he brings some receiving chops. He finally kind of cashed in on that reputation of his with that touchdown reception that he had. I want to say it was, let me find it real quick. It was a 16-yard catch, nice catch, kind of over the shoulder in the corner, end zone. Nice play by him. He finished, Zach, with 19 carries, 70 yards. And then he also chipped in, of course, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 14 yards. So a little bit shy of a 100-yard game. But, Zach, that is an extremely stingy Pittsburgh defense, which is why I'm surprised Jeff Driskel, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Gordon, they were able to get things going in the second half, and that's a credit to them. Real quick, we got one of the superstars in our community who has a YouTube profile picture that literally brings a tear to mine eye. Drew Hollenbeck jumping in. Love you, buddy. He says, Driskel was good enough to keep us in the game. Gordon stepped up. D could have been a lot worse. Coaching.
That's right. Yeah, it all comes down to that. And what Chad just said, I mean, he made a good point. Despite the injuries and despite the opponent, despite the matchup, despite the circumstances, players stepped up. Melvin Gordon stepped up. Hamler stepped up. Driskel for sure stepped up. The defense toward the end, they did step up. They have the horses, pun intended, to be a winning team. If they just had better situational coaching and play calling, they would be at least 1-1 right now, Chad, if not 2-0.
I'm trying to keep an eye out. We got a question here coming in on Twitter from Parker. I'm trying to keep an eye out while we're live. Normally we'd be, in on the Vic Fangio press conference, but we're prioritizing talking to you guys. We'll go back. If you see something on Twitter as far as an update on Locke, be sure to get it in the chat stream. John Bonnabeast, we'll keep an eye out for that. But up to this point, I don't think there has been any additional insight on the Drew Lock injury. So only time will tell for now. We just kind of got to wait until further information comes to light. And gang, real quick, we still got a lot to get to from today's game. Your super chats, your questions, your comments. But first, we got to make sure you tip your cap to sponsor tonight's live stream here, sportsbetting.com. Gang, head over to sportsbetting.com and join today for a risk-free week of betting up to $500. We love sportsbetting.com. Gambling is now legal in the state of Colorado. So go get your betting on over at sportsbetting.com. And Zach, a couple quick things, and then we'll get right back into the stream. Got to make sure as the Huddle Up podcast and Mile High Huddle continue to grow, everyone knows how to connect with us. First and foremost, gang, this is a must. Make sure you're following the podcast on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. And while you're at it, follow at Mile High Huddle. You get those two followed on Twitter, you're not going to miss anything podcast related or as it relates to your Denver Broncos breaking news and analysis in real time. Gentle reminder, you guys have just been crushing the merch store, huddleuppod.com. Head on over there, get your swag on, get yourself one of these MHH trucker hats, get yourself a football priest hat. There's hoodies, there's t-shirts, there's mugs, there's the face mask, as you saw just a minute ago from Drew Hollenbeck's profile pic. It's another way that you can support what we're doing here, huddleuppod.com. And if you're not in a position to do that, it's all good. Each and every one of you can do these three things. First and foremost, subscribe, like this video. This is especially crucial if you're on YouTube or Facebook. And if you really love what we are bringing to the table, this content we're bringing to you on the daily, share this out there. Help MHH, help the Huddle Up podcast continue to grow and reach like-minded fans just like you. All right, let's see what we got up here next, Zach, on the chat stream. It's moving quickly, so I want to get to a few super chats so the stream doesn't jump anybody here. We grabbed Chris. Did we grab Chris? I don't think so. Chris Hernandez, bona fide superstar. We might have showed it on the screen, but we didn't address it. Jumping in. Appreciate you, my friend. 24-year veteran of the Air Force. Also one of our favorite, if not the, but dang close. He's up there. Profile pics on YouTube. Impressed with the outcome despite the injuries and questionable coaching decisions. Zach, I don't know that I would say I'm impressed by certain points. I'm impressed by certain aspects of this game. What I'm kind of hanging on to, it's kind of the burr under my saddle right now, is when is Vic Fangio's team, whether you got Drew Lock under center or not, when you have a chance to win the game on a final possession, when are the Broncos going to come through in one of those situations? When is it going to happen? We've been waiting now. I'm trying to think last year. I'm going through each and every game right now, the Rolodex in my mind. Aside from the Raiders game, when the Broncos were protecting a lead in week 17, and you had Shelby Harris tip the pass on fourth down, and that was it. I can't think of a play where the Broncos or game where the Broncos won one of those situations. I might be missing something, but if you're John Elway, you got to wonder when, as right here, I'm not going to say it. Puddle here says death by inches is so ironic. It really is kind of smacking, bitterly at this point, Zach.
Yeah, it comes down to coaching. The common denominator for last year and this year is coaching. And the Broncos being in those positions themselves, Chad, being in those one-score games, being in the thick of things toward the end, having a lead toward the end of the game, protecting a lead or driving for a game-winning touchdown, it shows they have the personnel. They have what it takes to win on offense and defense, and this despite their injuries. That's the only excuse Fangio can have. 2 seasons now, he's dealt with a major injury on one side of the ball or the other. This year, it's both sides of the ball. That's the only saving grace and silver lining he can pull. That's his card. But until he's better situationally and Pat Shurmur's better situationally, they're never going to pull off those close games, Chad, because those incremental margins The difference in those games is coaching.
Yep. It's a huge role. I mean, you look at Mike Tomlin's staff, they bent but didn't break. They got a little close to blowing this thing, but you could just tell when it's a sharply executed coaching performance, collective performance. And an example, just as this is a small thing, and this is on the offensive side of the ball for the Steelers, that first down play in which the Steelers said, let's take a shot here because we might be able to catch the Broncos sleeping. And sure enough, they were able to. That Claypool touchdown down the left sideline that went for 1,000,000 miles. Michael Ojemudia, this is something I was wringing my hands about over the last 3 days, and I've written about it. We've talked about it on the podcast.
Catch the ball.
Roethlisberger and that coaching staff are vets, and they're going to go after the weak link. And the weak link today defensively were the rookie cornerbacks. You tip your cap to Ojemudia. You tip your cap to Bassie for trying to hang. This was their trial by fire game. It wasn't last week going against Ryan Tannehill. It was this week against Big Ben and that dynamic receiving core. And they just simply, it showed they're rookies. Ojemudia has flashed at times, but you would think in that situation, I know you want to load the box. You're thinking, oh, it's first down. They're relatively deep in their own territory. We're going to load the box. But you can't give one-on-one matchups, Zach, to this receiving core, especially when you're relying on rookie corners.
And when the ball is coming to you and you get your hands on it, catch the ball. I mean, don't let it go right through your hands. I know that's why you're a cornerback and not a wide receiver, but
Right.
Those are such game-turning plays, Chad. Those can change the entire complexity in 2 seconds. Ojemudia, though, he is very high upside, very promising. I will say I've eaten some crow a little bit on the pick. I think he can blossom into a very decent and very consistent starting cornerback in the system. He has some work to do. It's where the Broncos missed Boye. And there's no two ways about it, Chad. He was their number one cornerback, and then you reduce that depth chart to Ojemudia, Callahan, and Bosby. It's such a huge drop-off. So for what he's been going through so far, that's two hard teams he's played, the Titans and the Steelers. Ojemudia has done more good, I think, than bad.
Kenneth Booker jumping in again on Super Chat. Appreciate you, my friend. But he punctuates this one by saying, if we get the first-round pick, do we trade it for a king's ransom? And then he says, I don't want Trevor Lawrence. Look, Zach, fingers crossed that whatever the severity of Drew Lock's injury is, that it's short term. And by short term, I mean, 2 to 3 weeks tops. Let's hope, fingers crossed. If it ends up being something worse than that, and the Broncos end up vying for the number 1 overall pick, I don't think they take a quarterback. But it's so early. I can't even really reckon with that at this point, Zach. The complexion of the season is really yet to take shape. It's too early to say that, Kenneth. I'm sorry. I don't really, other than saying it, if it were today, right now, I don't think that they would take a quarterback. I don't think they would take Trevor Lawrence, but maybe they would. I don't know. It's just too early to talk something like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't see that either. They want to at least give Locke one full season as a starter, Chad, before they make a determination, good or bad. And right now, with his injury, it complicates things even more. You start to wonder, though, not to bring this theory out there, but last year was the thumb, this year it's the shoulder. You're going to start hearing that injury-prone label being attached to Drew Lock, and the longer that goes on, I think that would influence the Broncos' decision. But let's just see how his injury shakes out, if he can come back from that. It's way, way, way too soon. I can't believe I'm even about to say these words, to give up on Drew Lock just yet.
Absolutely. And you might say, oh, well, a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence is like passing up on the opportunity to take an Andrew Luck or similar, Patrick Mahomes, maybe. But I don't think if Luck were to miss this season, the rest of the season, knock on wood, okay? I don't think the Broncos are going to be in position for number 1 anyway. It's a moot point. This team, even without Luck, the defense will keep this team in just about every game. And you guys saw today, there's so much talent on the offensive side of the ball. Even a fair to middle of the road quarterback like Jeff Driskel was able to make some hay. And so, look, they're not going to. I just don't see that as a viable issue at this stage. Now we got our friend Adon jumping in, 6'10" Mexican on YouTube.
Thank you, Adon.
Appreciate you, my friend. He says, "Why start Ojemudia over Bosby? So close." That's something that sticks in my craw. This goes to coaching, Zach. Bosby, what did Bosby do? Like, who did he piss off in camp? Because everything we saw from Bosby last year, he was good in training camp this year. Who did he offend? Because we don't know it would have been any different if Bosby's on that, playing more in that role today than Ojemudia. But you got to think his veteran wherewithal would have made some kind of difference. But unfortunately, it was Ojemudia, Bassi, and then Callahan basically being the number one.
He's getting DeMarcus Walker syndrome, Chad. He's just in the doghouse for whatever reason. And one of the theories was as to why he didn't even make the final roster at first. He's been an unwilling tackler coming back from that injury. And I could see that even though his upside and his profile right now fits a lot better than Ojemudia. I'm a big Bosby fan, as are you, and as if most of Broncos country is. He showed out really well last year. For whatever reason, though, the coaching staff, and it comes down to coaching again, they just don't think he's as good as we think he is. Bottom line.
Bonafide super chat superstar David Kilgore, also in possession of one of our favorite YouTube profile picks. Love you, buddy.
Thank you, David.
He says, a couple of questions, guys. If Locke is unable to come back for a while, do we bring Rippon in or do we sign a free agent? Second, is the rash of injuries on the strength coach? Thanks, guys. I look, the strength coach, it's something we've talked about. People get their dander up when we do talk about it. And I understand why. I understand, I guess, how people can kind of get riled up about the topic of, putting any kind of blame on the strength and conditioning staff, but it's just not something we want to address at this stage, right? It is what it is. Let your eyes tell you the truth. All right. As far as the quarterback situation, Zach, it depends on the severity of Locke's injury, in my opinion. If it ends up being something that appears to be longer term prognosis, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Broncos go bring in a veteran. Otherwise, if it ends up being a quicker turnaround, let's just say 2 to 3 weeks, something like that, I think, you roll with Rippon, and Driskel and hold on for dear life.
You know what? It's interesting because guess who the emergency quarterback was for the game? Royce Freeman. I kind of wanted to see what would happen if he played quarterback. That's a whole other story. They're going to have to bring in someone if Locke's injury is anything more than day-to-day. You can't just have Driskel on the final roster, the game day roster, and no one behind him. So yeah, Rippon in that scenario, and knock wood that Locke's injury isn't a multi-week injury, he would get promoted to the active roster, and maybe the Broncos would sign a veteran to their practice squad, utilizing that new rule this year. Though in terms of a starter, I think Driskel earned another start if Locke is to miss time. They're not going to bring in someone to compete for the starting job. I think Driskel definitely did enough to give the Broncos confidence that maybe they can forge the gap and hold the fort if Locke is down for a couple weeks or longer.
Again, I really don't think, credit to Driskel, but I think his results were more a reflection of how, you can only keep talent down for so long. Like Noah Fant, good Lord, he went off in the second half. What a star he is. He's going to be a stud this year. Sorry, John. We all know it's true in this case. It's come out in the wash pretty evidently at this stage. Noah Fant's legit. Sutton, you could tell he made a few plays today, but you could tell something was still kind of gnawing at him with that shoulder, feeling some pain. Jerry Jeudy with another drop, but he still had some big-time catches. That's 3. He might be leading the NFL now, Zach, in drops for what it's worth 2 weeks in. Melvin Gordon, we never knocked him as a player in terms of his talent. We knocked the contract and its implications with Philip Lindsay, but in any negative criticism of the Melvin Gordon deal at this stage, we kind of have to eat some crow anyway because he's kind of saving the day with now lockdown, Philip Lindsay down. He looked good today. I mean, KJ Hamler, this was his first NFL game, his debut. Let me tell you what he finished with. Hamler ended up getting 7 targets, 3 catches, 48 yards, plus he had a 9-yard rush. So he contributes over 50 yards of offense. There's just too much talent on this offense for it to just lay an egg. And it took some time today, Zach, but it came through finally in the second half. What worries me is what Eddie's talking about. This is Ed Keating, by the way, one of our superstars. He's on Facebook right now, but he says Wilkinson needs to go, and the coaching has cost us both games. I'm sick to my stomach.
He does. I don't know. I can rant about this for an hour, and I ranted about it at halftime. I don't know if Wilkinson has compromising pictures on someone of the Broncos front office or what's going on with that. The affinity to Elijah Wilkinson, despite literally getting your quarterback injured, blows my mind. It's among the most puzzling personnel decisions or lack of I've seen in the John Elway era. I don't know what's going on with Wilkinson at right tackle. The offensive line and pass protection, Chad, it seemed like every single drop back, Locke or Driskel, was either getting hit or running for their lives, drifting back, just hurried. It wasn't a clean pocket all game. I do like the talent, and it's nice to see that the Broncos remember that Noah Fant exists. After going away from him the entire second half against the Titans, look what he can do. You wonder if they would have kept throwing it to him and feeding him against Tennessee, would that game have turned out differently? Could they have won that game? He's going to be a star. Hamler is looking really solid. Judy, protect his feet at all costs. His footwork, Chad, his stop-start ability is literally insane. So he impressed me despite the drop. That's correctable. Sutton, he left with that knee and some cramps. You got to monitor that. But once this offense can come together as a whole, quarterback, regardless, notwithstanding, Locke or Driskel, they have a lot of young firepower. And if they can just be coached and managed properly, Chad, the sky's the limit.
Real quick, the stream's moving hot and heavy, so we got to do some reverse engineer on the super chats and put them in as banners, but we're going to get to them real quick, though. I want to grab this one from James Moss. Appreciate the super, my friend.
Thank you.
And by the way, all of our super chat superstars, you got to connect with Zach and I on Twitter and John, because we like to be able to shout each super chat superstar out on Twitter after each and every stream, each and every podcast. So make sure you reach out and connect with us. And if your name is different on Twitter, your handle, than it is on YouTube, make sure you let us know who you are. James, by the way, says, can Elway hire a decent staff, or does he just hire his friends and pick up strays? I think this is, Zach. Here's the thing. I've criticized Fangio already. You've criticized Shermer. We both have for that final drive. But I don't think this is a case of this being an indecent coaching staff. I just think that, unfortunately, it doesn't matter if you're, Bill Belichick even. You lose Tom Brady. You lose also 4 of your 5 Pro Bowlers that you have on your roster, and you're going to feel the pain. Now, that's not an excuse for Fangio, but I think the fact that they were even able to compete in this is at least a credit to the coaching staff. The talent as well. There's just still too many faux pas coming from these coaches, at least from the outside looking in. We don't know exactly. Obviously, we're not inside the head of Jeff Driskel. We didn't hear the call that came in from Pat Shermer. We didn't hear all the rationale. We can only analyze from what we see from the outside looking in. But Zach, I'm not ready to say that this is a terrible coaching staff that the Denver Broncos have under Vic Fangio.
It's not terrible, but when you have a coaching staff, when your head coach is also your coordinator, and he's been a coordinator for 4 decades or close to it around the NFL, around football, then you have an offensive coordinator who was a head coach, your line coach was a head coach, your defensive, your in title only defensive coordinator is your right-hand man for Fangio. It's not a terrible coaching staff, Chad, but they should be coaching better than what they have. I mean, on paper, they're a very talented, experienced bunch, and we all love the Shermer hire. Most people rationalize firing Scangarello and hiring Shermer to make Locke a better quarterback. I have really not seen an improvement in Locke from 2019 to 2020. He looks a lot like the same. I know a lot has to do with the offensive line, but it's not overarching dividends you're seeing from the offense or the quarterbacking, and that's exactly why they brought Shermer in. So I wouldn't say they're terrible, but I would definitely say they're underwhelming, and I think that's inarguable at this point.
At the same time, it's hard to get too up in arms and critical about an offensive coaching staff when you lose as many players in the first 2 weeks of the season as they have. I mean, just losing the quarterback in the second game on the second possession, I mean, it's just a tough spot to be in, and especially with how young this team is on the offensive side of the ball. Real quick, let's grab bona fide superstar Mike Evans, who jumped in. Appreciate you, my friend. So consistent. Much love to you and respect, my friend. He says, I'm pleased with Driskel, revising my win total for the team to be 8-8, but due to coaching. Hopefully, we'll see some growth from them. Amen. In terms of hopefully we see some growth. At this stage, I think, depending on what the prognosis is for Locke, I think we're all going to have to kind of amend our season prediction for this team. But again, fingers crossed. If you guys hear or see anything while we're live, let us know if there's anything that comes out on Locke. But it probably doesn't end up being something we know for sure. I would guess till they get back in Denver. They might be able to still do an MRI in Pittsburgh and see what's really going on, but I would guess they're holding that back till Monday.
That's what I'm thinking. They're going to wait to get in front of their own doctors, their own medical staff back in the Broncos facility and do some tests on Drew Lock. I don't know if no news is bad news, though, but I would hope that by now they can rule out a severe, maybe season-ending injury. I just don't want his labrum, his rotator cuff to be involved. Just we can hope for maybe a 1 or 2 game injury because it looked fairly severe if he was ruled out. But we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. I think he underwent some testing in Pittsburgh, but more to come in Denver tomorrow.
I do worry about the fact that here we are now 2 a season and 2 games into his pro career, and he's just had such bad luck with the health, with the injury bug, really smacking even more so of the comparison to Matthew Stafford, who, if you guys think
Right.
back, I mean, Matthew Stafford was the number 1 overall pick back in '09, played 10 games as a rookie, and then got hurt 3 games in his second year. And then from there, he went on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, an 8-year run where he didn't miss a game. And then these last 2 seasons banged up again. So let's hope this is the only game Locke really misses, but it's way too early. We don't know. We simply, like Zach said, the fact that he was so quickly ruled out is not a positive harbinger of what the prognosis will be, but let's still maintain some hope. Big Kev Peterson jumping in on Super Chat. Love you, bro.
Thank
He
you, Kev.
says, not hiring Kyle Shanahan was the biggest mistake John Elway ever made, Zach.
It's up there. And I'll remind you guys again, there could have been a Kyle Shanahan, Wade Phillips pairing, and they'd still be coaching, I think, here, and they'd have a couple playoff wins under their belt by now. You can't really look backward, though. I mean, they didn't hire Shanahan. They went with Vance. It is what it is. You thought they actually upgraded significantly with Vic Fangio. They kind of righted that wrong, and I thought last year they did, but the more and more of these losses pile up, I don't know, Chad. I'm losing a little bit of faith, a little bit.
It's hard not to, right, at this stage when, again, inexplicably, they had a chance to win today's game after the worst possible calamity could befall this team. On the second possession, you lose your starting quarterback, the entire hopes of your season pinned on number 3. You lose him on the second possession, and you still find a way. I mean, you draw it up. Who could draw it up any better? You have a chance with your backup quarterback. You're in enemy territory with 3 minutes to go. The clock's winding down. You got all your timeouts. You got this game, Zach, on a plate, and you still blow it. When is this coaching staff, when is this team going to start coming through in those moments? I don't blame fans for being frustrated and feeling like it's the same old, same old. And that's a problem, Zach. That's a concern, because one of the things John Elway talked about that he feels like Vic Fangio's death by inches ethos when they hired him could remedy is the kind of here we go again feeling. In other words, because been some dark days under VJ, and during those dark days, Elway sensed that the Broncos took on this emotional complexion where when something went wrong, they just eyes to the ground, they would lose their intensity, lose their confidence. And it was kind of the here we go again and just let them walk all over you and just run roughshod. And at some point, you're going to have to worry about that now with Vic Fangio. Look, they showed stronger evidence of overcoming those tendencies, especially with the way they finished last season at 4-1 with Locke. But losing 2 games to open 2020, Zach, both of which you had a chance to win in the closing moments, it's going to be difficult to stave off that feeling. If you're these coaches, you're going to have to get out in front of that ASAP, because you saw it on that final possession of Pittsburgh, Zach. How come John Connor on second down rushes for 59 yards? He's got 3 or 4 different Broncos just bouncing off him because they have the here we go again by that point. Right. The offense blew their opportunity. And yeah, they knew the game was already over. So I get that. But still, that's the kind of mindset you have to guard against that.
Yeah, very well said. And, maybe it's just me, but I treat 2019 and 2020 as separate entities. It's not the same season anymore. So, yeah, they closed out last year strong. Fangio showed promise. Drew Lock showed promise, but it's a new season. And Fangio, for the first 2 games, and his coaching staff looks just as inexperienced and flummoxed as he did last year during that losing spell. I just wonder, you talk about Vance Joseph and the coaching failure since Gary Kubiak, since Super Bowl 50. I just wonder when the Broncos are going to win because of their coaching and not in spite of their coaching. That's my thing. I want to see when Fangio, whether his game plan or a call that he makes, I want to see him be the deciding factor in a Broncos win. Not the players have to come back and do it on their own and make it a fighting effort despite him. That's what I want to see, Chad. And until that happens, he's still unproven, and you can argue maybe not the right man for the Broncos job. Maybe.
We got a super chat coming in from an MHH Mount Rushmore member. We call him Zeus in this neighborhood. Stu McPeak jumping in. No direct question or comment with his super chat, but just showing some love. Appreciate you, my friend. And look, this is a message to all our superstars and every fan listening at this stage. You got to maintain optimism. I know it's hard with what's going on, but there is still a lot of talent on this team. There really is. This offense, this defense, there's a lot there. The coaches right now, they've been dealt a crappy hand, and so far they haven't really played it in the best way possible, that hand, but there's still an opportunity for this season to turn out and be something. So hold on to it. It's too early to go all fatalistic and start talking about 2021. By the way, Levi Hope, shout out to you, my friend, jumping in with a very generous super chat.
Thank you,
Levi. This is the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4th day in a row in which Levi has just been showing us support and love on super chat. This is a guy who reached out and said, look, I listened to every podcast after the fact on demand, and I was glad I finally was able to catch a live one. This was on Thursday. I reached out to him. We connected on social media. I told him what the schedule is. Hey, man, it's every day you get a live stream from 6 o'clock Mountain to 7 p.m. Mountain, except on game day. It's immediately following the game. And he's been with us, each and every one, and not only in the stream, but showing us some love, supporting MHH. So, Levi, credit to you, my friend, and appreciate you. He says, 2020 is trash. These injuries are insane. Here's what I'll say to that effect, Zach. The injuries so far, seriously, it's not just an injury to, 4, 5, 6, half a dozen guys. It's all the best players. What in the Sam Hill is going on?
Yeah, Saquon Barkley, he tore his ACL. Nick Bosa, I believe he tore his ACL. There's injuries literally everywhere around the league landscape, and you can attribute that to no preseason, a lack of an offseason. It's unfortunate. This is why I posited before the season started, should it have an asterisk next to it, the champion? I mean, is this season unique enough where there's so many different rules and amendments and injuries? It's so unique and uncharted. It's unfortunate. The Broncos, they're not different than any other team around the NFL right now. Literally every team has a major injury they're dealing with. It's just what it's going to be for this season.
It's something that the NFLPA was concerned about, which is why they didn't want the preseason, because the only analogy they had was 2011 with the lockout as far as the way this offseason shook out. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to say injuries were up something like 35, 38% that year. And it has everything to do with the fact that it's no long, slow burn buildup and then boom season. It's going from, the fire to the frying pan, basically out of the gates.
Right.
Big lineman jumping in. Appreciate you, my friend, on Super Chat. Can they replace the Gatorade with Ovaltine? Too many injuries. Yeah, I mean, the injuries have just been absolutely killing, and it's unfortunate. By the way, we got Dylan Von Arks, a bona fide superstar in our community, long-time listener, jumping in. He says, only coaching that upset me today was special teams, to be honest. Zach, we haven't even addressed special teams. Drop some knowledge.
I said it on the halftime stream. Literally while we were live, they had a big run back to start the second half, the kickoff. And Sam Martin, I can't pin that on Tom McMahon because Sam Martin just dropped the ball, but it's another calamity on special teams. And most of Broncos country were singing his praises, McMahon, after week 1. He's still the same old Tom McMahon. This special teams unit, maybe aside from McManus, who's earning his contract quietly, Chad, it's not been good. It's another area of the Broncos where coaching is a detriment. As plain as that.
Just when we were singing the praises of Sam Martin, and he was playing well today until that snafu that safety changed the complexion of the game, because the Broncos tie that and take it to overtime in that final possession. If it's not an additional 2 points added, am I right here? So 24-21. Yeah, you have a chance there on that final possession on 4th and 2. Yeah, you didn't get it on 3rd and 2. 4th and 2, instead of having to throw and go for it. I mean, you still could have done that, but you would have been in a position in that moment to kick a field goal and tie this. And maybe Big Ben still drives down and gets a field goal and they lose in regulation. But Zach, death by inches. This is what's so frustrating about this is it's everything Fangio preached in that interview with John Elway that landed him the job. It's exactly how this team is dying on a week in, a week out basis, seemingly, at least to start 2020. Jay Ritchie jumping in. Shout out to your better half, Ariel, by the way, Jay. Appreciate the support. He's like, guys, come on. Enough with coaching. The coaching had you lost your number 1 running back, number 1 wide receiver, number 1 quarterback, number 1 cornerback, number 1 rush linebacker, Vaughn. The coaching is what allowed the lack of talent to be closed. And I think there is some truth to that. It's not 100%. There's always more than one thing can be true at the same time. The coaching, I do think, helped elevate and make this a game, okay, when by all rights it should have been a blowout when Locke went down. But it's in the critical moments, Zach, is what I have the biggest beef with, again, with this coaching staff.
I think to say that, you're not crediting the players. You're not crediting Fant for making that catch or Driskel for making those throws. I mean, the talent brought the Broncos back, I think, despite the coaching. So we can give Fangio the get out of jail free card with injuries. I said that before. That's going to be his saving grace for this season. But we can also argue they should have been better against Tennessee with the timeouts. They should have been better in situational play calling today. It can be both. Not one thing is ever mutually exclusive in the NFL. It can, like Chad said, both can be true at the same time, and both are true at the same time.
It really comes down to situational, Jay. And again, he jumps back in. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
He says, what team can lose all those key skill players and still be in the game to win? No one. Well, the Broncos, you're right. It's a credit to, honestly, it's a credit to the coaching staff, especially on the defensive side today. Vic Fangio, Ed Donatel, they did a good job. They relied on their young corners, and you can pick a nit and say, why was Ojemudia in there? It should have been Bosby, and maybe it would have been different. And there's some truth to that, probably. We can guess anyway. But the defense, outside of that one big play, all right, the one big gash play, there was a few touchdown passes from Big Ben Roethlisberger, but the dagger was, and we haven't seen that from Fangio's defense since he became the head coach. They bend, they don't break. They've been able to get by the skin of their teeth without the sacks, without the takeaways, going back to 2019, because they don't allow the big play, and they allowed that to happen today, Zach.
You know what? And I've noticed when the Broncos send pressure, when they blitz, good things tend to happen. And I don't know why they just are reluctant to blitz. I know it's not Fangio's thing. He likes playing coverage and kind of disguising his looks, but they should send more people after the quarterback, because I will say they went to Heinz Field. The Steelers' offense was at full strength for the most part, minus the right tackle, and they held him down. They made some game turning plays. 3 and outs, got off the field. I think the defense did as much as they can do. And just if the offense was better in certain spots, they don't lose their quarterback and their wide receiver one.
Also keep in mind, gang, that this is the gut reaction. All right. You're going to get some more, we pride ourselves on being professional here, but we're going to have some more emotional takes. We haven't had time to sit and study the all 22. We haven't had time to look at any advanced analytics. We haven't heard what Coach Fangio or any of the availability today's had to say, because we're talking to you right now. So some of it, you got to keep that in mind. And Christy, by the way, jumping in, the queen of MHH, appreciate you and your generosity as always, Christy. And by the way, I did get your DM. I did get your email, and we'll have something to announce very soon with regard to that email. Appreciate you. She says, tell me something positive, guys. I'm having a hard time finding that right now. Thank you, Christy. And that kind of echoes Albert as well, who's one of our Facebook supporters. Appreciate you, Albert, who says, why are you so negative? Our offense is young, lost a couple key players, still had a shot of winning. This offense will gel as a unit. Let's focus on some positives for a minute, because we're both more optimistic guys. That's one of the reasons why we've been able to, succeed in our realm, right? In our lane, so to speak, is we do view the glass as half full. You have to. If you're going to be successful in anything in life, you have to be an optimist, okay? Doesn't mean you dispense completely with pragmatism, but you have to try and find the silver lining in order to maintain that focus and mindset and that drive and motivation. So that being said, Zach, what are some of the positives that you saw from today?
Young collection of offensive talent. You saw Jerry Jeudy, you saw KJ Hamler, you saw Noah Fant, you even saw Jeff Driskel, the quarterback. This team, especially on offense, has a lot of talent that kind of flies under the radar. But collectively, even Melvin Gordon, he looked like an $8 million a year running back or close to it. And that's if he could just live up to his contract, he would be a major asset for this offense, like we've been talking about. So one of the positives is that the Broncos have a solid, youthful foundation on offense. And on defense, I think one of the positives is Bradley Chubb looked a little bit like more himself today, Chad. A little less tentative, a little more explosive, willing tackler. There's positives to be had. Obviously, Locke's injury is a damper. Fangio's coaching or lack thereof is a damper. But the offensive talent, the rookie class, the young contributors, the foundation and the nucleus of this team, that's what's most encouraging, regardless of how the season turns out.
Well said. A couple other things I'll add to that is that, you saw, what's the best way to put this? You're seeing a team, as much as, a lot of the same faces from last year are on this team, obviously, but there's a lot of turnover. The Denver Broncos went into this draft with 10 picks, and they made all 10 picks, which is why you only saw 7 college free agent signings following the draft this particular time. But this new collection, this version of your Denver Broncos, the 2020 Broncos, are figuring out how to play together, figuring out their identity. And when you have turnover at the coaching level year over year, you're going to struggle out of the gates to find that identity, especially when you're still trying to get a franchise quarterback question answered. And you're seeing this team through adversity and through very close losses. They're going to start figuring some things out. My concern here, Zach, is that it ends up like last year where they figure it out down the stretch. It's too late. Your stretch run, you figured it out, credit to you. But by virtue of your trial and error process in which you were unable to, because the one thing we were talking about is we felt like with Locke under center, this is something we talked about during the offseason and training camp. With Locke under center, there's still going to be some trial and error learning curve. This is only his second year. There are going to be some bumps in the road, but that there was enough talent from Locke, enough talent on offense and defense, and enough coaching wherewithal to win more than they lose in those situations. What you can't account for, what you cannot foresee is the injury bug, okay? And so in that sense, like Zach said, there's a little bit of a get out of jail free card. You got to take some of the criticism off of this team when it's not just a few guys going down, it's every guy that goes down is a crucial key player and a Pro Bowler or a starter that this team is relying on. So allow this team to continue to kind of come together and figure it out. Hopefully they get locked back sooner than later. We'll get to more of that, though. Let's grab Justin real quick, jumping in. Appreciate you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
Justin, are you on Twitter? I'm trying to think if I know what your Twitter has. I don't think so. If you are, reach out and connect with us. We'll shout you out after the show. Appreciate the support. He says, what's up, fellas? If Locke is out for a period of time, do they go get another vet to back him up or roll with what they have? Dotson not playing blows my mind.
Me
Justin,
too.
you might have missed it initially. We think that if it is a 2 or 3 week turnaround type thing for Locke, they don't end up going out and getting a vet. They just promote ripping. If it's longer than that, I would think they probably go see what's out there. Doesn't necessarily mean they bring one in, but they're going to at least take a look. They'll be taking a look tonight, to be honest with you.
Right.
But we'll see. But the issue of Dotson, Zach, I know you talked a lot about this during the halftime stream, but what's it going to take? And we hated to even bring up the idea that what's it going to take? An injury to Locke to it didn't change. He stayed in the game.
I was half serious when I said that, Chad. I didn't think the Broncos would actually let it get that far because we saw in scrimmages, we saw in practices, we saw last week against the Titans, Wilkinson is a detriment. He is no better than having a literal traffic cone at right tackle. He is the worst tackle I have ever seen in my years of covering the Broncos. Worse than Donald Stevenson and worse than Menelik Watson. And when you're worse than those two, you have no business being on a football team, let alone in a starting lineup. I don't know what the point of even having DeMar Dotson on the team is, Chad, if your right tackle, who's not even a tackle, is getting your quarterback killed and Dotson can't get in the game. That's where I think the players start to lose a little bit of respect for the coaching staff because obviously they're getting their quarterback killed. It's not putting them in the best chance to win. What are we doing? Why is he in the ballgame? I have no answer for it. I am perplexed as you. It makes no sense. It's coaching. Coaching.
We got to do this ties in also to our friend Zachary Smouse, who I'm going to have to do a reverse engineer real quick on his super chat. John, thanks for keeping an eye out there. We did miss him because the chat stream is just so active tonight. Love you guys. We'll grab Z-Dub next. John Dale. So on Facebook. So we need all new coaches again, or will they figure this out? It's, again, as much as we want to be critical of this coaching staff, Zach, it's hard to jump to any overarching conclusion when the injury bug just won't slow down.
Relent. Yeah.
It just won't relent.
Yeah. You can't blame the coaching staff. And again, having those injuries, losing Vaughn for the year alone, that's your get out of jail free card. Then having your franchise quarterback go down, potential franchise quarterback. They're going to get this year of the coaching staff. Regardless, though, next year, when Fangio does survive, that's the hot seat time. That's put up or shut up, crap or get off the pot. He could be fired next year, but I think the coaches, say what you want about them, Chad. I think they are safe for the season.
Our friend Zachary Smouse in the house jumping in earlier in the conversation. Appreciate you, Zach.
Thank you, Zachary.
He says, when is Dotson going to be ready? Wilkinson needs to be replaced ASAP. He's ready. He's been ready. He's a veteran. He's been in the league 11 years. He's an 8-year starter at right tackle. He's ready. Okay? Yeah, he got to training camp. He got to the Broncos on literally as training camp is starting. But it's not as steep of a learning curve for an offensive tackle as it is a wide receiver or any defensive player. You got to know your protections. You got to know some of the verbiage and all that stuff. But he's ready, guys. This is simply the Broncos saying, no, we're kind of tied to Wilkinson on this $3.2 million RFA tender. That's guaranteed. He was our guy last year. He's going to be our guy. This is them basically just kind of being stubborn. I think you got to blame Mike Munchak a little bit on this. And, far be it for me to criticize Munchak. He's a Hall of Famer. But at the same time, you do have to question it at this stage. You got to wonder, what in the heck? We said again, is it going to take calamity? Is it going to take abject, just the worst possible outcome to happen in order to spark change? Turns out, maybe not. We'll see if that was enough, Zach.
Chad, but Fangio is the head coach. He has autonomy to go over
True.
Munchak's head and get Wilkinson the hell out of the game. So that's where I put it on Fangio. I don't want to hear about young coach or inexperienced or defensive-minded. He has the autonomy and the power to make that call. As revered as Munchak is, he's still a subordinate below Vic Fangio. So again, it lays at Fangio's feet being the head coach of the entire team. He's not just the coordinator. He runs the entire operation, Chad.
Tucker on Facebook, if we're close in so many games, it shows we have the horses. The talent overall is there. The offensive line still needs some work. But remember today, gang, too, this is the best defensive front, in my opinion, in football. And you saw it. He says, still needs some work, but coaching needs to change somehow. Coaching is a major issue. We've talked a lot about coaching. It wasn't all the coach's fault. The players failed to execute in some critical moments. I mean, we can talk about the sack on lock that got him hurt. We can talk about Ojemudia dropping an interception in the end zone. We can talk about Ojemudia getting burned down the left sideline for whatever it was, 80-yard touchdown, whatever it was. We can talk about Sam Martin literally changing how the end of the game could have shaped up by dropping a dead-on target long snap in his own end zone, safety. We could sit here and count it up. There are a lot of execution errors, but this team, and this is why Tucker is right, this team still had a chance. This team still had a chance to win it inexplicably against all odds at the end of the game, but they came up short. And, it's hard to put your finger on it, Zach, because you think, well, when are they going to start figuring out how to win some of these close games, right? We've said that a couple of times tonight. Well, at the same time, the flip side to that coin is, how can you develop a collective knowledge and learning and progress when the injury bug is cycling through so many different players, including with the quarterback? If that's Drew Lock, I would put money that final possession comes down and they're able to punch it in. I would have put money on that, just the way the momentum swing in favor of the Broncos in the second half of that fourth quarter. But it just, again, the injury bug, man, it's if you allow it to, it's going to completely take the wind out of your sails. So for now, don't do it. Hold out hope. We don't know what the future holds with Drew Lock's injury yet. Try and stay positive. Stay positive for now, Gabe.
And I meant young as in second-year coach, not literally old and young. I mean, he's an older guy, but second-year coach. And we have an update, Chad. Locke gave an interview with a sling on, and he said he's going to get an MRI tomorrow. I saw the comments in the chat stream, if I can find them. He said it was funny to throw after the injury. He felt funny, and he's going to get an MRI tomorrow. So it's not great that he's in a sling, but if it was a broken collarbone or something more significant, I think we would have known about it already.
Here is what Mike Kliss says about the injury specifically. Let me grab this so everyone can see. We can all follow along here. Quote from Kliss on Twitter, Locke, MRI tomorrow, and because it is his throwing arm, team may proceed cautiously. Well, they'll absolutely proceed cautiously. And Thanks, what, Zach? Zach? I think the performance of Jeff Driskel today is a little bit encouraging for the coaching staff to say, all right, we can, if it ends up being a week-to-week type injury for Drew Lock, we can, try and get by for a game or two because of Jeff Driskel and not rush him back out there.
Well, you can beat the Jets in week 4. I don't know about the Buccaneers. They looked pretty good today after their week 1 loss. Brady did look a little better today. So, yeah, you can maybe ride the Driskel train and Melvin Gordon running the ball and playing better defense. You can get by, but not having your franchise quarterback out there. Or, I'm sorry, I saw some contention in the comments about that. You're a potential franchise quarterback in Drew Lock. And based on this question by Mark Langley coming in here, $4.99, thank you so much, Mark. Just want to add, Chad, that ligaments feeling funny, that kind of scares me. I was worried about a labrum or rotator cuff. I hope it's not that severe. A lot of ligaments in that throwing shoulder. I wish it was his left shoulder, not his throwing shoulder, but we'll have to see what the MRI brings tomorrow. Looks like no bones broken, though. Nothing majorly, no collarbone, anything like that. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I mean, usually, especially when you're on the road, even if this game was at home, they would say whatever the injury was, they would get an MRI at the facility, and they wouldn't probably put out any information on that till the next day. Then they would provide some information and say, we're going to get another MRI if it was really bad. We're going to go get a second opinion. Okay. So for now, we don't really know much more than what we already knew, but it is at least encouraging to hear that he was talking to media a little bit. Like he was, I don't know. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but.
Right. I was going to say, if it was super severe, he wouldn't be talking. He wouldn't be given press availability. So that's a good point.
WE jumping in, one of our superstars here and there, jumps in, supports the cause. It all adds up. It all helps. Keep the lights on here at MHH. Appreciate you, WE. Should the Broncos use Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon like the Browns use Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb? On the bright side, we're not like the Falcons.
Yeah, the Falcons blew, what was it, like the Cowboys came out with that victory today. It was incredible, 40-39. They scored like 19 or 16 points in the final 5 minutes. Yeah, at least it can always be worse, guys. That's how it goes in the NFL, though, Chad.
Absolutely. There's a few things I want to get to. We're coming close to an hour, but we're not in a huge rush to get off. I want to shout out this particular superstar who the stream jumped, but we're still going to give you your props, and thank you, Anthony Edwards, on Super Chat. Much appreciated, my friend. Again, to our new superstars, make sure you reach out on Twitter and connect with us so that we can, first of all, we want to be connected with everyone in our community. There's Anthony, but especially the superstars, because, you guys are contributing to the cause here. You guys are helping to provide this content to everybody else. Yeah. I mean, so thank you. We want to stay in touch. Reach out, connect with us on Twitter. Anthony jumps in again to say, appreciate you, dog. I would hate to see Locke's career end up like Jake Locker's, with just poor offensive line play, getting him injured, and derailing his career. Yeah, we would all hate to see that. Again, he's been I think the quarterback that Locke has been most compared to since becoming an NFL prospect really is, in fact, Matthew Stafford. And so far, hopefully, knock on wood, this injury doesn't end up being as consuming for year 2 as Matthew Stafford's was, but it just – the similarity, the analogy is so close. It's striking. Glenn Hauser also jumping in on Super Chat.
Thank you.
Bonafide superstar. He provides so much to our community. He's got a podcast going. Credit to Glenn and Mundungus and Christy and Adam, what they got going with their pod. Congrats to you guys. Glenn, we love you, buddy. What else can we say? Injuries had nothing to do with poor play calling at the end. And McManus trying a 58-yarder. We haven't talked about that, Zach. And giving Pittsburgh the ball back. Hashtag these players have heart. Hashtag MHH. We're talking about a kicker who not only just got paid, but it's the same kicker who was throwing his helmet around on the sideline last year when Fangio wouldn't let him attempt a 70-some-odd yarder.
Right.
He hit a 48-yarder to get on the board to break the ice for the Broncos early in the game. But when it goes from 50 or more, you can't even – it's not even flip a coin odds for McManus. We're talking over the last 2 years, we're talking like 25%. It's like a quarter of the time he'll hit those kicks. So I know Vic Fangio and the team, Zach, Tom McMahon, they see him hit these things in practice. But for whatever reason, when he's 50 yards or more in a game, 3 times as often as he does, he misses those. So if you're Vic Fangio and you know that you got a momentum, if he misses this, you got a momentum swinger and a shorter field for the opponent, that's got to start factoring into your decision-making. I don't trust Brandon McManus from 50 yards out. I really don't. If it's a must, like if it's a second quarter ending kick, okay, go ahead and do it. If it's an end of game, you have to do it. But in those situations in between, Zach, I'm sorry, unless it's 50, 52, 54, unless I'm at mile high, maybe, but still,
Right.
he just isn't hitting those kicks.
That was my thing. It's so hard to kick at Heinz Field for whatever reason. When there's wind, there's those crosswinds. It's just a tough place to play. I mentioned that on the podcast the other day. To attempt that field goal shows little confidence, Chad, in the rest of your team. It was a desperation ploy that it seemed like they're trying to justify McManus's contract. Here, go earn your money by nailing a 58-yard kick. And like you said, McManus has thrown kind of a hissy fit about getting those chances, and he wants to set a record and hit these 70-yard kicks. If you can't hit 58, bro, you're not going to hit 70. So let's pump the brakes on that. He was good otherwise, Chad, but sending him out there, again, you can say it's another questionable coaching decision, squandering that field position in that game at that point.
We got Raul. And by the way, real quick, Glenn's question was, not question, point. Didn't really hear Malik Reed's name mentioned. Yeah, slow day for him. But I will say that Jerry Atachu and Bradley Chubb, again, this is why I took some criticism, Zach, for mentioning in my winners and losers article last week coming out of the Titans game that Bradley Chubb and Bryce Callahan were winners. Even though they didn't particularly flash or make a huge impact, the winning aspect of that was that they got their first game under their belt, the confidence booster, all that. We talked about it before, and you saw that begin to come out in the wash today. They took another step forward in week 2, and I think Chubb is going to continue to build up steam. It's going to take probably the majority of this first quarter of the season, but by the time you get into the second quarter of the season, I think you're going to see the old Bradley Chubb doing his thing. And you know, he's probably not going to be the same quality star level pass rusher that Von Miller was in his prime or at his age, but he's a guy that I think can consistently push for 8 to 10 sacks a year. And especially in lieu of Von Miller at this season, where Von's just not a part of the equation, you need every sack you can get. But Zach, I was stoked from what I saw for the most part. I haven't watched all 22, but from Chubb and Atachu in week 2.
Yeah, Atachu kind of broke contain on that Big Ben touchdown where he kind of scrambled outside the pocket, hitting the end zone. But Malik Reed, he is what he is. He's not Von Miller, and when you have a kind of a weakened Bradley Chubb and no Von Miller, the onus is on you. And the Steelers' offense did a good job scheming him out of the game. I thought Chubb, though, like you said, Chad, the more and more that he plays and he comes out of these games unscathed and he gets more confidence back in his body, you're going to see the more and more old Bradley Chubb come out. It won't be long before he gets his first sack. Then after that, it won't be long before he makes his first game-changing play, sack, fumble, strip fumble. So you're, like Chad said perfectly, it's going to take probably 4 to 6 games, but after that, you will see the 2018 Chubb come right back into action.
And by the way, that left tackle, Villanueva, you know, he's a top shelf left tackle in this league. He's a Pro Bowl. And he didn't have a great week 1, but he played a lot better today. Raul on Facebook jumping in to say, as for our free agent signings, Graham Glasgow, Jeff Driskel, Sam Martin, and Melvin Gordon have proven to be contributors this early on in the season, but Nick Vanette, no business on the field. Yeah, we can put a little asterisk on Martin, but yeah, Vanette, dude, give me back Jeff Hireman, like quick, if we're talking about, I'm joking. I'm joking, but I've seen nothing from Nick Vanette up to this point that makes me go, yeah, that was an investment well made. Like, I'd rather see Butt out there in those snaps. I'd rather see Albert Okwuegbunam. I'd rather see Andrew Beck. Based on what we've seen from Vanette so far, very underwhelming.
How about more Noah Fant? Can we just keep it at that? Yeah. Can we not try to keep force-feeding these and funneling these targets to other tight ends and not name Noah Fant? Nick Vanette, he has no business on this team, Chad. For a blocker, he's not a very good blocker. He brings nothing to the table in terms of being a pass catcher. He fell on his own 2 feet, Chad. He tripped over the turf monster, fell to the ground, then got tackled trying to get back up. It was a pretty embarrassing sequence. He just brings nothing to the table. And again, that was wasted money. I said it then when they signed him, and I'll say it until they release him. That's a wasted addition to this team.
It really was. If the Broncos have anything in spades this year, it's talent and depth at tight end. And I get that you didn't know for sure what you were going to get from Jake Butt in training camp. Was he going to stay healthy? But you at least had already Jeff Hireman. Yeah, you're paying a little bit less to Nick Vanette. They're saving about $2 million if you're, comparing Jeff Hireman and Nick Vanette's contract. But so far, that savings hasn't justified, the play up to this point, I should say, hasn't justified the savings. RIP TG. TG. Now, this RIP. So TG, for those of you who don't know, is in our hearts still big time member of our community. who our understanding is no longer with us. RIP, if you know TG, please reach out to me or Zach and email us, milehighhuddle@gmail.com. Reach out on social media. If you know anything about TG, please reach out to us so we can get some background. We'd like to be able to talk, just give our regards and thoughts and prayers if we can to his family and stuff like that. So please reach out and let us know if you know him, or knew him, I should say. Prayers up. The upside is we don't look like the Jets. LOL. Zach, the Broncos are not the Jets. That's why Kenneth Booker, who we love, God bless Kenneth Booker, big time member of this community, it's just too early to start saying number one overall pick. This is not Jets level ineptitude. This is not Jets level dearth of talent in all three phases. This is just an offense and defense. This is just a team that can't get out of the injury bug's way.
But does that make it acceptable? I mean, is that the standard that we're trying to aspire to, that we're not the Jets or we're not the Falcons for giving up a fourth quarter lead? I mean, I'm so tired of settling for mediocrity. I'm tired of being complacent when I want this team to keep winning and being back on the NFL map, being relevant again, being back in the postseason, stringing together victories, dominating opponents, blowing out opponents. I want to see that. I want to see the Pat Bowlen standard come back, Chad, and not the bar keep lowering and lowering and lowering. Before it was, okay, we'll be close to 500. Then it was, we're not as bad as last year. Now we're not the Jets. That's what we're trying to be here. So I don't accept it. I want the Broncos to be championship standard and championship contenders. Nothing less.
I do too. I just don't think, that's, you count your lucky stars. At least they're not the Jets. They're not even close to being the Jets, to be frank with you. All right, we're at an hour 6. We got to start winding it down a little bit here. John, I see another one here. We don't leave any of our superstars out in the cold. I'm scrolling down here. There he is, Levi. Wow, man, you are blowing us away, Levi, these last 4 days, man. You are coming in off the top rope and establishing yourself. Really appreciate you, dog. He says, fellas, I appreciate you guys staying positive. We're gonna tell you what we think, and the gut reaction is always going to be a little bit more emotional, and there's just no getting around that. I don't care if you're radio, I don't care if you're podcast, I don't care if you're ESPN writer covering this team every single day. You become invested, and so when things go horribly, you're going to have emotion is going to impact somehow, some way your analysis. Okay, there's just people are human, yes, including sports media, including Zach, including me. Yes, we are human. We are your football priests. We are human. So this, it's a little bit more emotional today. We'll be a little bit more gathered probably in our analysis, have more time to really analyze the implications and maybe rewatch the game. Well, the tape probably won't be available all 22 till Tuesday, but nevertheless, Levi, we try to keep it positive and support like this from you and all of our superstars and just all of the engagement here in the chat tonight is allows us to do that as the fuel. So thank you, my friend.
I had this reputation of being this negative Nancy and just being overly, wringing my hands, but I give credit where it's due. Melvin Gordon played well. Garrett Bowles played well. We're going to tell you like it is. We're not going to sugarcoat good or bad. And that's why I think Broncos fans appreciate about us, Chad, is we bring it straight. It's emotional, it's charged, but that's what it has to be after a loss like that. As gut-wrenching as it is, we can't just sit back and blow smoke or just kill the team completely. We have to be objective, and I think we do a good job at that.
Unfortunately for Bowles, he did play relatively well today. I say relatively because there was a lot of pressure from that front seven, and I haven't watched the All-22. I don't know what he's been credited with in terms of pressures. This is me going off the eye test of watching it on my phone as my wife and I are making a drive, then getting back and kind of juggling a few different things here today before we hopped on to do the gut reaction. But he didn't jump out to me as being a liability, solid in pass protection. But he did, Zach, have that one holding foul in the fourth quarter, and it was on a run play, which is atypical. Usually, I should say traditionally with Garrett Bowles, if the yellow laundry flies, it's going to be on a pass play. There's a couple exceptions I can think of off the top of my head, but yeah, that did jump out today, and that's something that he's going to have to, try and continue to limit. But, the last 6-7 games, 8 games of his, it encourages me that he is going to be able to limit those. And Flippin' Boots jumping in. Thank you, Flippin'. It's good to see you, dog. Can't have Locke being aggressive with Wilkinson. And that brings up a good point that I've just kept forgetting to bring up. What in the hell was Drew Lock thinking? Throw the freaking ball away, dude. Right. You're not Patrick Mahomes. And by that, there's multiple levels of analysis on that statement. But what I mean is physical Patrick Mahomes is a big, strong dude, okay? You're not Cam Newton. You're not Josh Allen. You've already shown to have a little bit of, I don't want to call him injury prone, but some bad luck early on in your career. Let's just put it that way. You got to be smart enough in those situations. I'm sure the coaches drilled this into him. In fact, I saw in a series later on in the game, Pat Shurmur criticizing Jeff Driskel for not throwing it away when he should have and taken a sack as he's coming to the sideline. I would assume Drew Lock had been coached and told, hey, man, if it's not there, just get rid of it. This pass rush is too ferocious. I was as disappointed, Zach, as I was to see Drew Lock go down, just like everybody else. There was that part of me in the back of my mind going, Drew, it's early in the game. Live to fight another day. Throw that ball away. I mean, the one he begins to fall, picks himself up off the ground, and then literally as he's kind of picking himself up off, boom, the hit from behind. And you just saw right away that was going to be an owie type hit. And I guess it's going to take, disaster for Drew Lock to learn some of those lessons.
If you didn't know anything about Drew Lock, if I blindfolded you and knew nothing about him and I put on that play, you would immediately know he was a young quarterback, because that is the trademark of a young quarterback, is trying to extend plays and making something happen and not having the foresight to, like you said, live to fight another down. Throw the ball away, put yourself out of harm's way, and get your offense out of harm's way as well. So that's Locke being young, inexperienced. The more he plays, the more he'll realize he has to do that. And I think the injury now, Chad, kind of drilled it into his head. Listen, if you don't want to get hurt, if you don't want to hurt your team, you got to know when to just say uncle on certain downs.
Live to fight another day. It was early in the game. You don't need to play hero ball on the second possession. Right. James Moss jumping back in. Appreciate you,
Thank you, James.
Reach out on Twitter, my friend. And if we are already connected, please still just reach out and let me know who you are so I can make sure I know what your handle is and all that stuff. James says, remember last year when Bowles was terrible and got better, maybe Mike Munchak thinks he can fix Wilkinson the same way. It's possible. In fact, I'm sure he believes that he is a work in progress and that there's some upside and he can mold him. But at what cost? Especially when you have a better option. Potentially, we don't know that for sure. I think, objectively speaking, you can say, just by virtue of his experience, that DeMar Dotson is a better option. And he's not a guard miscast at tackle. He's a tackle, right? 6'9", long dude with experience. Get him in the game, Mike.
And I don't buy this at all, because last year, Bowles never got a quarterback killed. Elijah Wilkinson, through barely 2 games, it wasn't even 2 full games, got his quarterback injured. So no, he's not trying to fix him. You can't fix an unnatural tackle coming off surgery to expect him to play right tackle as good as the guy you had in Juwan James, or potentially as good as Juwan James. It's not, I don't know what it is. I don't think it's trying to fix him. I think it's just being stubborn, or Dotson's not showing something in practice, Chad, that gives the Broncos confidence that he can play well in the game for whatever reason. I don't know what the loyalty to Elijah Wilkinson is, but it's already cost the Broncos Drew Lock. Let's see how many more things it can cost them as time goes on.
All right, couple more, and then we got to get out of here for today. But make sure, gang, you keep it with milehighhuddle.com, because we're going to be dropping a ton of content on the website as soon as we hop off this live stream.
Yeah. From Schefter. That's breaking.
2 to 6 weeks from Adam Schefter. Son of a B.
Driskel time.
2 to 6 weeks from Adam Schefter. All right. For those of you listening, I'm reading let me jump in and make sure I don't want to say something. No offense to you, my friend. Let me grab Adam Schefter on Twitter. Let me find the tweet.
Could be worse, but I was hoping it wouldn't be that.
Here's the tweet. I'll let everybody see it. From Adam Schefter here. Bear with me 1 second. Right as we're about to hop off. The news comes down the wire. Surprise, surprise, from Mr. Connected in Denver himself, Adam Schefter. Quote, Broncos quarterback Drew Lock, who was in a sling after today's loss to Pittsburgh, sprained his AC joint, is expected to be sidelined between 2 to 6 weeks. Per me and Jeff Legwald, of course, is the local Denver beat writer who's there. He will undergo an MRI on Monday to help determine extent of damage and exactly, of course, how long he will miss. Zach, so let's talk about that for a second. This might extend our show a little bit tonight, but 2 to 6 weeks. Best case scenario, 2 weeks. That's back in time for week 5 against the Patriots. Worst case scenario, you're middle of the season. What did you see from Jeff Driskel today that gives you any kind of encouragement that the Broncos can at least hang in that interim?
Well, you have the Bucks. They don't have the best defense in the world, and you saw that Driskel can not only move the ball, but he can put points on the scoreboard. And if Melvin Gordon can run like he did, they can hang with the Buccaneers. And if they can play good defense against Brady, they can win that game. Not worried about the Jets, Chad. And you know what? Sprained AC joint, same injury as Cortland Sutton. So it's a pain tolerance injury. If he can come back in 2 weeks, the season's still very much, on off life support. It could be the shorter end of that time frame. It could be 2 weeks and not 6, but it's definitely unfortunate. We're going to see Driskel for at least 2 games because that Jets game is a Monday night. I think week 5 could be the earliest he'd come back. They're going to have to beat the Bucks, or else the season is over. It could happen. It's not the Saints. It's not the Chiefs they're playing. It's a beatable opponent. I think they can win with Driskel. They can do it.
Pranked Films jumping in real quick. We got to wind this down, gang. Sorry. Got some articles. We got to get up some news on lock. But we don't leave any superstar out in the wind. Pranked Films jumping in. Appreciate you. I feel like this is going to be the year of the backup, sadly, with all the injuries. The Broncos have a tough schedule, but I think they can still win some games. Zach, I do think they can win some games. This thing isn't over. That encouraged me today. They just got to figure out collectively as a coaching staff and as a team, personnel too, why are we coming up short when the chips are down? We're within inches of victory. We're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Right.
How can we tighten this ship? Aaron also jumping in. Appreciate you, my dog.
Thank you.
On Super Chat. Don't forget, again, Aaron, reach out on Twitter, connect with us. We want to be able to stay in touch with our superstars and shout you out after the show. We can't keep shooting ourselves in the foot. Drop balls, safety, missed assignments. We got to fix these phases of the game. And that's true, Zach. I mean, rarely is a football team perfect in a game in the NFL. There's always going to be that 1 or 2 plays that you wish back. But it's hard to blame the Broncos too much when they just continually keep having this terrible freaking luck with the injury bug.
They're taking a revolver, Chad, and just shooting themselves in the foot and looking at the gun and reloading it and doing it all over again. They can't get out of their own way. They're their own worst enemy. I mean, name your cliche. The Broncos are beating the Broncos right now. They could have beaten the Titans and should have beaten the Titans. They could have beaten the Steelers, and you could say they should have beaten the Steelers. They should be right now, despite the injuries and the coaching ineptitude, a 2-0 team. So as soon as they get out of their own way and stop beating themselves, they will start winning some ball games.
Okay, guys, we got to get out of here for now. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining us. A mile-high salute to our Super Chat superstars. Much love to our Facebook supporters. Love you guys. If you want to become a supporter, you're one of our Facebook community members, just go to facebook.com/milehighhuddle. Click that big blue button that jumps right out to you. Become a supporter. We appreciate it. I'm taking this attitudes. I would suggest everyone take this attitude that Steven's got here.
Yeah.
Still excited for the rest of the season. Be excited, guys. And despite the disappointment at this stage, remember, 3-4 months ago, we didn't even know if we'd have football this year. So savor it. Despite the disappointment, despite some of the bitterness at this stage, savor the opportunity that we are watching the Denver Broncos play football. And that's a moral victory regardless. And Zach, one last thing. Shout out. Everyone knows Pobby, bona fide superstar member of the MHH community. I don't want to divulge personal information she might not want out there, but we just want to say our thoughts and prayers are with her. And some stuff that her family is going through right now. So, Pobby, maybe you're not with us live, but you're probably listening after the fact. And if you are, shout out from all of us here at Mile High Huddle. You got a lot of love and support behind you between the staffers and the community. So our prayers are with you. And, keep us in the loop on what's going on. If there's anything we can do, by all means, we want to know it. But, gang, in the meantime, follow my partner, Zack Kelberman, on Twitter, @KelbermanNFL. You can find me at Chad and Jensen. And then stay tuned because we will be back in the saddle tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. Zach and I will go through the aftermath. We'll pick up the pieces. We'll start looking ahead at what the future holds for this Denver Broncos team and take it from there. But, Zach, have a great start to your week, my friend.
You too. Hopefully better days ahead, Chad. Hopefully we'll hear some better news tomorrow.
Amen. All right, gang. Thanks for spending some time with us here today. As always, for Zack Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We will see you tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern.